Hey everybody, it's the Sheriff again. We're back with another GLC video, but today we're going to be doing something a little different. Today we are looking at a GLC Archetype tier list. Now, I did make this tier list myself. If you want to make it yourself, the link will be in the description. A little bit of parameters for this tier list. I tried to get essentially all relative archetypes on this list. I've got 54 so far. If I'm missing one, then please let me know and I can definitely add it to the list. A little bit about my thought process here that I've got in the description. We say a deck is S tier or B tier or F tier, but what does that mean exactly? So this is my thought process. For a deck to be in S tier, it means that the deck is strong into every single matchup, and this is where the most consistent decks are going to be, right? A tier is going to be strong into most matchups, right, with just a little bit of weaknesses here and there, but is still very consistent. B tier is strong with some matchups and somewhat consistent. C, I've got as fall short in most matchups and it has little consistency. And then D tier I put is very hard to keep up in every matchup it plays against. So, without further ado, let's start with grass. Now, first up, we have Rillasaur. Now, Rillasaur is a deck where it has a lot of stage 2s in the deck. Venusaur doubles your energy in play, and Rillaboom accelerates it into play. It has a lot of setup, but once it is set up, it is very strong and very hard to take down. The issue with this deck, it is very susceptible to ability lock. So things like Hex Maniac counter this thing pretty heavily, I would say, as well as things like Garbodor or something. But still a very solid deck. I'm gonna put this into A tier. Then we have the Stage 1 grass deck, which uses Eldegoss and Cherim, is that its name? To essentially do the same thing as Venusaur and Rillaboom, but not the same thing as Venusaur. One of them searches out energy, and then the other accelerates it from your hand. So the pro with Rillaboom is it accelerates it from the deck, so you don't have to have that combo. This deck is more low to the ground. You don't have nearly as many stage 2s. You typically only have one, in fact. But I think there are pros and cons to both these lists. I think they're extremely similar. So I'm going to put this in A tier as well. I think it's very solid. Then we have the Turbo Snail list. Now, this utilizes Wo-Chen, I think that's its name, the snail, where it has an attack where it does 30 damage, but if you have like 3, maybe it's 20 damage, 3 or fewer cards in your deck, it does 120 to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you're trying to just like mill your own deck, essentially. You've got a lot of draw in here, for example the Beautifly, that lets you draw cards and just get through your deck super fast. Um, while you're going through your deck, you're attacking with things like Torterra and whatnot until you get to the bottom and basically come from behind with the snail. Um, I think I think this deck is a little scary, a little harder, a lot harder to pull off. A little bit of a gimmick, but still can be good sometimes. I'm gonna put this in C tier. I don't think it's nearly as good as its other grass counterparts. There are a lot of them, as you can see. Next we have Special Conditions Grass, and this is exactly what it sounds like. It is a deck that focuses completely on special conditions. You use cards like Butterfree that flip for conditions, the Cradily that also flips for conditions, and then you have Pokemon who take advantage of that, like Victory Bell, who do more damage depending on how many special conditions there are on your opponent. So you're doing damage plus chip damage, you know, from like poison and whatnot. So I think this is also a lot harder to pull off, less consistent, and you know, the most popular deck in the format, colorless, while being nerfed, you're just directly countered by Snorlax because it can be affected by special conditions. So very hard into that matchup for sure. So yeah, way harder to pull off. I'm gonna put this in C tier as well. Now we have Grass Control, essentially item and supporter lock, where you're using Badoo and Vileplume to item lock your opponent, and you're using the Executor to supporter lock them. So more of a control style. Grass list can be super disruptive, and I think this deck is actually pretty good with the damage modifier grass Pokemon, with Lurantis and Lilligant? Is that what it is? I'm terrible with names today. But they're boosting your grass damage, so you're actually doing a decent amount of damage while locking your opponent. So I think this is in a decent spot. I still don't think it's as strong as its other grass counterparts, so I'm going to put it in B tier. Let's see. Next we have, what did I name this? Jumpluff Toolbox is what this is. Now, this Jumpluff specifically is a Rapid Strike Jumpluff that has an ability that lets it attack twice per turn. So you utilize this with a bunch of the TMs, like Blindside, like the Evo TM, like Crisis Punch, but you also have Rapid Strike scrolls that you can use. So this plays a ton of tools, and you're just taking advantage of them with this Jumpluff attacking twice. Super cool deck. I think it's super hype. I still think it's a little harder to pull off than its other counterparts, but I still think it's a pretty solid option. In B tier, probably, yeah, the order doesn't matter. And then we have Festival Lead, which utilizes things like Diplin and the Thwackey that revolve around the stadium Festival Lead, or whatever it's called. Yeah. where it's similar to the jump bluff, where you're trying to attack twice, essentially, and you could even play these in the same deck. I think it's probably around the same spot as the jump bluff, though. Just in B tier. Just an average deck. Then we have Tanky Grass, and this utilizes Lavani and Cricketune to boost your HP and take less damage, and you can play healing cards and things like Pot Helmet and stuff in your deck to just tank hits. I think this is a very solid deck, very solid option. Yeah, you're typically doing a little less damage probably, but you know you're tanking hits, which means your opponent isn't taking prize cards, so you kind of just get to the finish line before them. I think this is going to go in A tier. Then I have Meganium, which the whole deck revolves around this one Meganium where you get to cheat. It's a rare candy on an ability each turn, but it's huge because you can use it the same turn your Pokemon comes into play. So if you have the basic and the stage 2, you can immediately put it into play. So this cheats out a ton of stage 2s, and you get all of the strongest grass 2s in the same deck, and you still get to keep like some consistency. And you can search all these Pokemon out with both Grotle and Grovyle, which have the same ability essentially to just get a ton of Pokemon into play. Super fun. And I think it's about the same level as the Tanky Grass. Just a very solid option. And that's it for Grass. We'll go into Fire. I think Grass has the most archetypes, probably. Very diverse. So yeah, we won't take nearly as long on each type, I don't think. So, alright. First up we have what I call Standard Fire, which is just, you know, a very vanilla fire list that's just trying to get energy into play and attack your opponent. Right? Usually all of them play the Charizard, which doubles energy. In fact, I think not every single, most fire lists are going to be playing this Charizard. But then it also utilizes things like Salazzle and the Smooth Over Macargo to add a little bit of consistency to your fire list. Still, fire can be pretty clunky still. It doesn't have the best history, and can fall short in a lot of ways. Plus, with water being super popular, its weakness is pretty, like, applicable, right? So I'm gonna put that into B tier. Next I have Spread Fire, which the past few sets we've gotten Pokemon that support this archetype more and more, which is pretty cool. I think Spread is a fun concept. So this utilizes like Heatmore and ends Darmanitan to do damage to the active and something to the bench. So you're taking multiple knockouts at the same time, which is great. It still plays the Charizard, but still kind of in the same boat. It just is less consistent than a lot of decks and can fall short sometimes. Bench Barrier really just completely destroys this deck. So we're going to put it in B tier as well. Then we have Fire Mill, which utilizes Moltres and Centiskorch to mill opponent's deck. Now, when it comes to mill, I do think this is probably the best mill deck in GLC. You can mill a lot of cards with this deck, but it requires a lot of setup. You do need your Charizard. You still need need things like the Embor. Some play the Delphox even for draw, which is a lot of stage 2s in a type that is really hard to set up. So I'm gonna also put this in B tier. And then we have Burn, the Burn deck, the Burn book. Shout out to Forrest for this one. I will never forget again, I promise. So, Burn is exactly how it sounds. Instead of trying to knock out your opponent's Pokemon with damage, you're doing it with Burn, which is super cool. There's a lot of cards that, boost this. Like one of the newer Magmortars, which increases burn counters, and the Infernape, which is super cool. But it's kind of the same boat as the special condition grass deck, I think. Yeah, but I do think that the burn deck is better than the special condition grass deck. So it's directly, it can be countered by Snorlax a lot. But this also does utilize like some normal attackers, and that can do more damage with burn, but they still do damage and stuff. I don't know. I do think this is better than special conditions grass. So I'm gonna put this in B tier as well. Yeah, fire is just hard. It's just hard. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's terrible all across the board. So okay, let's go to water. And first up we have the newest lad with the gigantic whale with hydro pump. Okay, the rain dance water version, right, where you're just trying to accelerate a ton of water energy into play and just taking huge one-hit knockouts on things. And I think this is, in my opinion, I think this is the strongest water list, the strongest water archetype, and is really hard to deal with this whale, right? So once this thing is powered up, you're two-hit KOing this thing with like most decks. So super good. Water also has like some of the best support, right? You have Octillery and the Inteleon line, and then the best accelerants like Frostmoth and Excalibur and stuff. So just so much utility in this deck. So that's going to go into A tier. I could see an argument for even S tier. I think this deck is very, very strong. Special Whales, or Leviathan, as some people call it. This is the special energy version of water, where you also have another huge Wailord that is doing a ton of damage that attacks more with special energy. And the Titan does basically the exact same thing. So isn't as reliant on things like Excalibur to accelerate energy, but it is more susceptible to things like Copycat with Mimikyu and Zoroark. So that is a consideration. There are pros and cons to both. I think these are extremely similar power levels. but I would put the Rain Dance one slightly above the Special Whales. Next we have the Toad list, which this is the list that is more lower to the ground in terms of energy cost, and doesn't really play energy accelerants. It plays things like Palafin that does a ton of damage for 2 energy, and the star of the deck is this Seismitoad, which attacks for 2 energy, has a ton of HP, but also has an ability that makes it so your opponent's Pokemon, its attacks require more energy to attack with. So super disruptive. Once you have the Toad going, it's very hard for your opponent to deal with in a lot of matchups. But it can be slightly less consistent than the other water types, I would say. So I'm gonna put this one into B tier. I still think it's a great option though. Then we have no energy water, which this is all about putting a few cards into the Lost Zone and then attacking for free with Cramorant and reoccurring it every turn, and then utilizing Inteleon, the other Inteleon that does snipe damage with an ability to fix your damage numbers and whatnot, and can set up multiple KOs. So more gimmicky than other water lists. Has a hard time with ability lock. Like, that's a huge counter to this deck. Really, really rough with it. So I also don't think this is as strong. So I'm probably gonna put this in C tier. Then we have the Rapid Strike water, which takes advantage of Rapid Strike energy and the Octillery, which is very strong, that searches out any Rapid Strike card once per turn, which is very, very good. This can be a little less consistent than other water variants because you don't have the draw Octillery, but you are using Rapid Strike attackers. This is more of like a spread water deck as well, where you're kind of doing a little bit of damage here and there. You're utilizing the Lapras that can snipe things, Starmie that can spread a ton of damage everywhere, and then like Cloyster, which can tank a bunch of damage and also spread a bit. So still a solid option. I think this is going to go into B tier. Just not nearly as strong as these other counterparts, I would say. Next up we have the Water Mill deck, which uses Wugtrio as its primary attacker, which flips 3 coins, and for each heads you mill 3 cards from your opponent. So potentially 9 cards just from this one attack, and then you're using other mill disruption cards, and then also taking advantage of the stadium that lets you reflip for attacks. Relying on the single attacker is pretty rough, I would say, and can be a lot less consistent, a little bit more gimmicky, I would say. So I'm going to put this into C tier. Next we're on to lightning decks, and we'll go to the strongest one first, which is Spread. Now, um, I think out of all spread decks, I think this is probably the strongest spread deck in all of GLC. So you're taking advantage of Electivire, which does 50 damage to all your opponent's Pokemon, which is, potentially 300 damage spread across an attack, which is super, super good. Some lists also utilize the Raichu that does 50 damage to everything that already has damage, so you have to be careful with this one, because it hurts yourself as well if you're already damaged. But yeah, just it's really easy for this deck to just take like 4 prize cards in a single turn. And yeah, I think this is the best lightning deck. I think it's very, very good, very strong. It really is hard into certain matchups, especially with bench barrier, but there are ways to take care of that. So I'm going to put that into A tier. Next we have what I call standard lightning, and this is just, your regular lightning list where you're just trying to blow things up, attack the active, and take prize cards, right? Which this archetype took a tremendous blow when Raikou was banned, and hasn't really seen much play since then. And most people just turn to spread. So this deck is very squishy. It kind of has the same setup as the spread deck. I just think the payoff with the spread is higher. So I'm gonna put this one into B tier. Next we have Shock Lock. This was a menace in non-GLC formats, let me tell you. But in GLC, you're setting up this constant loop with this Raichu, constantly picking it up and stuff. When you evolve with Raichu, you automatically leave your opponent's active paralyzed, and then you're using things like Lantern, which puts 4 item cards from your discard back into your deck. And you're getting through your deck and just constantly doing that every turn and just stalling your opponent out. Can be super effective. This deck is, I would say, one of the hardest decks to pilot. You have to really know what you're doing with this deck. If you don't know how to use it, it's going to be very hard to win, I would say. And really, really reliant on things like this Raichu, right? So, if they prize the Raichu or something, it can be really, really difficult. So, yeah. I think this is going to go into B tier. Then we have this Magnezone control list, kind of similar to the Shock Lock deck, where you're trying to control your opponent. That one is more of a stall gimmick. This one is more so utilizing, like, getting rid of your opponent's whole hand. And using this Magnezone that lets you play 2 supporters per turn, which is super strong. And then using other things to paralyze your opponent's Pokemon, stall them out a bit, and then start taking prize cards. Like with the Zekrom that can paralyze, for example. I think Shock Lock is probably a little stronger, but I would say this is way easier to pilot. So you know, pros and cons. I still think this will go right next to it in B tier, though. All right, we have Psychic. Here we go. I think a lot of people debated whether Colorless or Psychic was the strongest type. With the ban of the Twin Energy and DCE, I think Psychic is the strongest type, and you're going to see that here. So, first we have Combo Psychic. Now, this, the core of this deck is going to look very similar to a normal Psychic list, where you have Malamar and Gallade and Xatu to accelerate energy, and you're taking knockouts with Giratina, but you're utilizing Monkey Dory to spread damage to set up multiple knockouts in a turn, but you're also utilizing the Natu that with the TM blindside can snipe something to take 2 prize cards. And I think that this deck is phenomenal. I think this deck is extremely strong. It's very, very good against spread, let me tell you. Its worst matchup is probably like the big whale, I would say, or dark, right? But yeah, just very good, very, very good. Very consistent. This I am gonna put this in S tier. Now we have standard Psychic, where your core is the same, right? You're using Gallade, you're using Malamar to just be super consistent. Sometimes it plays Xatu, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it plays things like Tinkaton, sometimes it doesn't. That all falls into this core, where you're just trying to build up your strong, basic attackers in Psychic and just take KOs consistently. One of the most consistent decks in the game. This is also going to be an S tier for me. Then we have Lost Zone, which is one of my favorite decks. This deck is so much fun to play. Holy cow. Requires a lot of setup, right? You got to get 10 cards into the Lost Zone, but it's more consistent than you think. It does have some glaring weaknesses to tanky builds and healing builds. And is really, really hard into dark. And also actually pretty hard into fighting, I will say. I don't think it's as strong as these other Psychic types, but I still think it's an extremely great option. I'm going to put it into A tier. It can really catch your opponent off guard as well if they don't know how to play into this deck. So then we have this deck called known as Revolving Door, essentially. You have this Gardevoir that you're choosing to play instead of Gallade, which doubles all Psychic energy in play, which is super good. You pair that with Dimension Valley, and things like Giratina, which comes back every single turn, and things like Latios are attacking for a single energy, right? So, is slightly less consistent than your your normal Psychic type archetypes, because you're getting rid of things like the Gallade and whatnot. but still very, very good. I think this deck is very strong. I'm also going to put this into A tier. Then we have Psychic Spread, which utilizes the Dusknoir to move counters and typically uses things like Lunala that doubles damage counters, and then you're using a ton of Pokemon that just spread damage, right? So really, your Dusknoir and your Lunala are kind of your endgame, and you're kind of setting up your opponent's board where you take basically all 6 prize cards in a single turn. A lot harder to set up and is extremely weak to healing cards like Rough Seas and Crystal Cave, right? But is a load of fun to play. I do think though that like Lost Zone is stronger than this, and like Lightning Spread is stronger than this, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in B tier. Then we have Ability Lock, and this utilizes the Trash, the Garbodor, that locks all abilities in play if it has a tool, and this can completely shut down decks. But it is also way less consistent than your other Psychic archetypes because you're getting rid of all of your consistency cards because you can't use them with the Garbodor. So, can be really good once you set up. It's just setting up is the issue, and keeping your attackers going. So I'm gonna put this into B tier. Next we have Fighting, and first up is Hitmonbros, and this uses Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, and Hitmontop in this 3 attack combo, which is super cool. That by the end of it, it does a ton of spread damage, and you're setting up KOs. And if you can pull this loop off twice, you're probably winning the game, right? The issue with the Hitmonbros is, you know, you're doing this 3 Pokemon combo in Fighting, which has absolutely 0 draw support, so it can be really hard, and Bench Barrier really hurts this deck. So without the draw support and with Bench Barrier just directly impacting this deck, I'm gonna put this into B tier. Then we have Garganacl, which utilizes Garganacl and Colossal to accelerate energy onto your guys to blow things up really big. Has a lot of setup. Once it is set up, it's a very good deck. The issue is setting that up right, because again, you don't have draw support in Fighting, so it can be hard to pull off. And some of your cards, not all of them, they're weak to, you know, the best type in the format, which is Psychic. So that is rough. And that goes for the next deck as well, as you'll see. But I'm going to put Garganacl into B tier as well. Then we have the Extreme Speed version of Fighting, which is... it basically just only plays attackers in this deck, is way more low to the ground, and everything attacks for a cheaper cost. Probably more consistent than the Garganacl list, the Garganacl. But I would say if the Cole list is set up, then it's better. If it's not set up, then the extreme speed list is better. So there are pros and cons to this one, just like some other decks in the same type. So I'm going to put this into B tier. We then have Fossils, which is a very control-y style of deck in fighting where you're trying to get multiple fossils out that completely shut down your opponent. They play things like Ammonite and Amistar that prevent your opponent from playing items. And then you get out Archeops, which completely stops them from evolving their Pokemon. And, you know, once that's in play, you can run with the game, right? The issue with this is it's hard enough to set up a deck with multiple stage 2s. It's even harder when that deck is in fighting without your draw support, and it's even harder when both of those stage 2s are fossils. Now, I do think this deck can be very good when it sets up. It's just setting up is not consistent enough, nearly as much as it needs to be. So I'm gonna put this one into C, just way harder to set up. Then we have the Ancient list of fighting, and this plays Ancient Pokemon and has the Energy Accelerant with the Professor to utilize with these Pokemon. And this archetype is even sometimes combined with some of these other archetypes with like Extreme Speed or the Garganacl, right? So it's kind of in the same power level, I would say, as those. Just pretty similar across the board. So it's going to go there. Then we have Cynthia's fighting list. Cynthia's fighting archetype, which utilizes Lucario as your consistency piece if you have Garchomp in play. And you would think that I would be a super big fan of this this core. I do love me some Garchomp, as some of you know. But it's relying heavily on this Lucario and then setting up your Garchomp, which is really hard because it's in fighting, right? So I'm gonna put this into C tier as well. Okay, on to Dark. Now, a lot of people think Dark is dead because of the ban of the energies. I still think Dark is good. It is still good. You're hitting the best type for weakness. That's one thing. And you still have Guzzlord, and he's absurd. And your other attackers are still very good. Now, Dark is pretty carried by Guzzlord, right? And Guzzlord got nerfed a lot. Your only draw is Leopard, but I still think this deck is very good. I'm gonna keep it in A. I think people are just gonna have to change, you know, their way of thinking of deck building with this deck. So, you know, we're gonna start playing Janines and maybe even Crispin. You know, just yeah, we just need to adapt with this one. But I still think that the Turbo Dark list is still going to be very good, right? Let's go to Poison, the Poison Dark list. I think this is probably the best. Maybe not special condition list. I think this is pretty even with the burn list, I will say. instead of burn, you're doing poison, and poison has a lot of things to use, right? You've got like Verbank, Gym, and then you're using like Toxicroak to boost your poison even further. Um, yeah, I think similar power level to the burn deck. I'm gonna put it in B. Um, yeah. The thing about the special condition list, like the burn one and the poison one, is if they can just like switch out a lot from the active, then you're not doing enough damage. So yeah. Next we have Dark Spread, which uh, is interesting. You're still using some of the same core, but then you're using attackers like this other Weavile, which does 60 damage to everything with an ability, which is a very strong attack, right? Like, that's similar to the Raichu in the Lightning Spread. It's doing it to both your Pokemon and your opponent, but it's 60 and it's for a single energy, so very, very good attack. And then it also plays things like the Yveltal, which also spreads damage. I don't think this is as good as Turbo Dark, but still can be solid. Um, so I'm going to put this into B tier. We then have Rainbow Dark, the Dark Rainbow. And this is Dark that plays a very big variety of energy. And uses the Grafii, this guy, this little guy, to do a bunch of damage based on how much different energy you have. And then you can use Amazing Yveltal on this list, because you're playing a bunch of different energies, right? And then you definitely can utilize Crispin in this list to take knockouts. A lot more gimmicky, less consistent. Yeah, very, very gimmicky, I would say. I'm going to put this into C tier. Then we have the Rain Dance version of Dark, which uses this Hydreigon that you guys can't see. There it is. That has the same ability as Baxcalibur, but for Dark. The issue is, water has way more support for getting more energy to accelerate into play. And so you also are utilizing things like the Crobat line, which draws you cards on evolution with the Crobat and the Golbat. So I think this has potential to gain popularity, especially with the ban of those energies. Yeah. I'm gonna put this in B. I think it's just solid, just average, right? And then we have the Monarchy with Nidoqueen and Nidoking, and this Nidoking has an ability that lets it attack for free if you have Nidoqueen out. Very, very good, but has a lot of setup, which I think is... I think playing multiple stage 2s in a Dark list can be very difficult because it doesn't have the best draw engines. But one set up could be pretty good. So I'm going to put that in B tier as well. Let's go to Metal. And first up is Standard Metal, or Turbo Metal, which uses Revavroom and Matang to just like draw a bunch of cards, accelerate energy onto your big attackers like Zamazenta, and recur Zamazenta as much as you can because the card is broken, and just take KOs. Um, I think this is a very, very solid deck. I think it's gained a lot the past year. I think it's pretty solid. Very, very solid. I'm going to put it into A tier. Has very good draw support, energy, acceleration, and some great attackers. So then we have Tanky Metal, which is probably the best tanky deck in GLC, I would say. You have a lot of like damage negation and healing in metal, on top of having just like big fat bodies on the board, right? To just heal. So your opponent isn't taking prize cards as you are. So, probably uses a lot of the same engines as the former build. You're playing a little slower. I think it's a little bit more difficult to play this deck, I would probably say, but still also very good. I'm gonna put this in A tier as well. And then we have Rain Dance Metal, which uses the Magnezone with the same ability. Accelerate as many metal from your hand into play as you want with this guy. I don't think this is as good as the other counterparts. Right, your energy accelerant is now on a stage 2 instead of stage 1s. You're playing a lot of the similar attackers though as like the standard build. But I think it's just slightly weaker. I'm gonna put that into a B tier. Right, on to Dragon, the best gym. We have traditional Dragon right here, right, that uses Garchomp, which is one of the best, strongest attackers in the game, right? Where it comes into play and it is just immune to everything for a whole turn, and this thing is taking multiple knockouts, right? Very solid. And then you're utilizing, you know, the traditional dragon attackers, and having your draw support with Dragonite. A lot of people have been dropping Dragonite lately, but, you know, I still include that in this archetype. Dragon has gained a lot over the past year, I would say. They've, you know, Crispin is one of those things, right? Crispin is just so good in Dragon. One of the best cards in the deck. And yeah, Dragon has gotten a lot of consistency, and its attackers are just very consistent across the board. You know, all of them are hitting 160 like every single turn, right? And some attackers can even go more. So I'm gonna put Dragon in A tier. Now we have Welder's Dragons, which is a way lower to the ground dragon list. It utilizes the Reshiram that accelerates a fire energy into play if it's in the active. This deck only plays basics, so I think it can be pretty aggressive. However, I think if the other dragon deck is just set up, then it's just way stronger. So I'm gonna put this into B tier. I think, yeah, I think the other one is just stronger. Yeah, but still a solid option. Okay, here we go. On to colorless, right? The controversial one. So we just had the bans of Twin Energy and DCE, right? So where does colorless go? Is it dead? Is it still around? Find out next episode. See you guys. Just kidding. Okay, here we go. So, hops, hops package, right? That's first up. And utilizing hops Snorlax, hops Cramorant. You can use the hops Wooloo line as well. I still think this deck is just so good. Like, Cramorant alone can just fix this deck. Still just super, super powerful. It's going to have to be way, it's going to have to adjust slightly with the energy nerf. But I still think it's just like so strong. And then Turbo Lax, the Turbo version of Colorless that we were all playing basically before Hops Pokemon. If you choose to not use the Hops package, I still think is extremely, extremely strong. Is it S tier? I don't know. I think this teeters. I think it can still be an S tier. I think adjustments are going to have to be made. I can see an argument that it's now an A tier. Still just the most broken. Oops, sorry. Just the most broken draw engine in the game. So I'm gonna keep it here. I'm gonna keep it an S tier for now. Right there. Yeah. Then we have Archeops, which has grown a lot less in popularity. Which it might be the way to go now with the energy debacle thing. I still think Archeops was like so strong with the research lab. Once that was banned, this took a huge hit, but I still think Archeops is very, very good. And accelerating from the deck is very, very strong, so I'm gonna put it in A tier. Still has the best draw engine, right? So and then we have Crazy Code, which sometimes Crazy Code and Archeops are played in the same deck. But I decided to split them just to go over the pros and cons of both. Porygon can accelerate, as many as you want during a turn, but they have to be in your hand, right? Whereas Archeops gets it from the deck. But with the most powerful draw engine, you can see a lot of energy in a turn. So, Porygon still very strong. I'm going to go ahead and put that right next to Archeops. I think there's an argument for both. I still think they're very strong in A tier. We then have Colorless Spread, and this deck is interesting. I think the Iron Jugulus is super good, and then it uses Hisuian Braviary to spread damage as well. Not the best spread deck. So I'm gonna put it into B tier. Still a solid option if you want. And then we have Colorless Birds, which fills your deck with birds. And I don't know, you steal people's French fries and stuff. So you've got Pelipper, which is a really, really cool consistency card. And then the Unfazant, which can cheat evolution and is a really disruptive card. Super, super good. If you play this against a deck that struggles with energy acceleration, then this deck can be very, very solid. This deck does have a pretty big, like, glaring weakness to lightning, though. Um, and that can hurt it a lot, because lightning is still pretty popular, right? And I don't think it's nearly as strong as um, your other colorless options. So I'm gonna put it into B tier as well. And then fairy. Let's go. Let's talk about fairy control, right? It's kind of like shock lock, right? Where you're stalling and you're milling your opponent. This deck has some glaring weaknesses if you know what they are, and is extremely difficult to pilot, right? Very, very hard. But if you know what you're doing with this deck, it it's very, very good, right? So very, very hard to pilot. I will put this into A tier. Yeah, just very, very good. And then I saved the worst for last. We have attacking fairies, which, its pool of cards is extremely narrow. Its power level isn't nearly as high as any of these other attacking lists. Does not have very many consistency cards, and it does fall short, I think, in every single matchup. And I'm going to put this into D tier, sadly, the only D tier. Yeah. So, that's our tier list right here. Let me scroll up a little bit, show it off. Here we are. Yeah. If I missed any archetypes, let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to add it to the tier list. Again, the link to the tier list is in the description if you want to fill it out yourself. And in the comments, also let me know if you disagree with any of these, and we can have that conversation. That'd be pretty cool. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.